You're listening to She Speaks, a Let Her Speak podcast that celebrates women's fearlessness, resiliency, and readiness to change the world. Welcome, friends, to the very first episode of the official She Speaks podcast from Let Her Speak. I'm your host that will be with you on this journey that hopefully will span for a very long time, Catherine Porth. I'm the founder of Let Her Speak, and you'll get to learn a little bit more about my story as I go through the interviews with the amazing women that I've had the opportunity to learn from, to grow with, and to hear stories from over the last several years since starting Let Her Speak. But this podcast is going to take a little bit different turn. So to give you a little bit of a background and a history, if you're just discovering us, I started Let Her Speak in 2017 as a hobby and a passion project, and quickly figured out that it was meant to be something much more to me than just a passion. It was meant to be something that I dedicate a lot of my work and a lot of my life to. And right at the brink of leaving my full-time job and going into Let Her Speak full-time, the pandemic happened. So that was February of 2020. I was just starting to pick up steam in the middle of March of 2020, and then the world shut down. And rather than feeling defeated and feeling like everything that I had built up to do, because at that point, Let Her Speak was largely things that we could do in person. They were meant to be face-to-face opportunities for women to connect, to get to support each other, to share stories together, to learn from each other. I couldn't do that anymore. And so I started a project quickly after the entire world shut down that I lovingly called the She Speaks Spotlight. And it was meant to be a way for women to still be able to be in front of people, to not be forgotten about, to get noticed, to be seen, heard, and valued for the amazing things that they were continuing to do in the midst of something that none of us have ever experienced in our entire lives. And out of this project, I started recognizing a lot of similar themes and a lot of women sharing very similar life experiences that, for the most part, most of us felt like we were the only ones that ever experienced it. And some of those themes were phoenix stories, rising up out of the ashes, out of something that you felt like you weren't going to survive, but instead you built something new and you built yourself a life that you couldn't even imagine before the crashing and burning of whatever happened. Stories of not feeling like enough, feeling like an imposter, feeling like you don't know what you're doing, and therefore you're never going to be able to figure it out. And women who have pushed through that and recognize that they do know what they're doing, they are experts. And it's a lot of conditioning that we are put through from a young age to feel like we are not enough, or to feel like we have to do more than anybody else in order to be valued and to be seen as someone of importance in the world that we a lot of times live in as women. And the third thing, which is what I'm dedicating this first season of the She Speaks podcast, I almost said series, but the She Speaks podcast to, is about taking a moment to look back in order to celebrate how far we've come. And that's a quote that I really love, that the only reason and the only time that we should ever be looking backwards is in order to be mindful and to celebrate how far we've come. And I think a lot of times we're so focused on having to get to that next goal, having to get to that next destination, that we are forgetting about the journey that we've been on and the growth and evolution that we've all been through, especially over the last 2 years. And since starting the She Speaks Spotlight as just a pet project while I waited for the world to open back up, it was just a series that I did that I shared on YouTube. I shared through our Instagram, which is at Let Her Speak US, if you're not following us yet. And I recognized that there was so many things that women were changing and they were accomplishing and they were impacting in the midst of a pandemic that I felt it was necessary. And I took it upon myself as part of my duty as a steward of the entire movement of Let Her Speak, that I take a moment to give women a platform and a space to be able to reflect on how far they really came, especially when we felt like the world stopped and nothing was moving forward, nothing was changing. A lot was actually happening. And a lot of amazing things that happened during the pandemic, when you really look back, were things that were started by and were facilitated by women. If you look at the statistics of the amount of jobs that were lost and the amount and the people who either had to leave their job because they needed to take care of the young ones at home, or it was a necessity in order to help a spouse out with their changing jobs. A lot of those jobs were left by or were laid off or closed for a lot of women who were in those positions. A lot of changes in management and a lot of changes in leadership. We saw actually a decrease in the gain that women had into upper leadership levels. But when you actually looked at the organizations that went through the pandemic and did fairly well and were incredibly supportive of its employees, that didn't see the mass exodus that we are seeing even now with employees leaving their companies, the ones that were led with a more feminine side to leadership, since leadership is a spectrum. There's a masculine and there's a feminine side to different leadership qualities. But those that displayed, whether it was a man or a woman or someone who identifies differently, that those that carried a more feminine type of leadership quality, that is empathetic, that is compassionate, that listens and wants to help, isn't pushing constantly for better profits, better revenues. Those were the businesses that actually did very well during the pandemic, besides the e-commerce conglomerates that we all know because of necessity. But we're talking about beyond those companies, those that saw good employee retention, and the world started seeing that there's a real need for feminine type of leadership qualities in the leaders that we have today. And I think that, and I hope that because of the last 2 years of everything that we've seen and that we've experienced, that hopefully we've learned that where we were 2 years ago is not a place that we should strive to be at again. And a lot of the changes and a lot of the things that we can do are much greater than I think a lot of us realized. The things that we can grow through and the things that we're able to survive and not just survive, but actually thrive out of is much bigger and much greater than I think a lot of us realized that we could do. We really were able to some degree test our limits. So that's what we're bringing to you in this season, is an opportunity for the women that we interviewed during the She Speaks Spotlight that we did for the last 2 years. give those women an opportunity to look back on who they were at the time that we interviewed them and who are they today. And I hope through these stories that you hear that you also give yourself the permission to look back and really, really look back at who were you in 2020? What were your values? What was your mission in life at that time? What were you passionate about? What were your priorities at that time? And when you think about ranking your priorities of what were you giving the most energy to? What were you giving the most time to? What did you think were the most important things for you to be focusing on in your life? And how has that been rewired? How has your thoughts about what life really looks like, a happy life for yourself, what does that actually look like now in 2022? I know, at least personally for me, back in 2020, I felt like I needed to create a movement that was just probably going to stay in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is where I am based out of, where the organization is based out of. And I felt like it wasn't going to get very much further than Knoxville. And I was 100% okay with that. I still would be more than happy for it to stay in Knoxville. But because of the pandemic, we were able to connect with women all over the country and interview women all over the country. If there wasn't so much of a time difference, it probably would have been women all over the world. But unfortunately, getting up at 3 a.m. to conduct an interview, you would probably not get the best side of me at that point, which is a goal to have. But I noticed and I recognized that what I was doing, I wasn't fully giving myself the credit and understanding the value of what I could do to help people. I was playing it small is one way to think about it. And I was really thinking pretty small about what it was that I had built and what it was that I had done. And which has always been an issue for me. I've never been very good at talking myself up, at letting others know the value of what I can do. And if you're nodding your head right now, chances are you probably have had experience in corporate America, because that is exactly where a lot of this self-doubt and this staying humble, staying quiet mentality came from. Was that I spent a decade in corporate America where as a woman, a lot of times if you felt like another woman was boastful, especially leaders, if a woman is boastful but a man is confident, right? A woman can't get over herself, while a man is shown to have great leadership potential because he can firmly establish the value that he brings to the company, or that he can accomplish all of these things, and it's okay for him to talk about them and to give himself a pat on the back. But for a woman, you had to kind of keep it humble, and you couldn't be too loud, and you couldn't be too forthright, and you couldn't be too honest about things. You had to be soft, and you had to be quiet, and you had to tiptoe. And I would say for a lot of us, that's not a natural state for us to be in. And I think internalized a lot of that and have been working through that for quite a few years. And I still struggle with talking about the things that I can do and the things that I can accomplish and the things I have accomplished. So I hope that if you're in that same boat as me, that we will go through this journey, as it were, together in order to be better about being our own greatest cheerleader and being our own best friend, and to think about ourselves as our own friends, and to talk ourselves up as if we were so excited to talk about these amazing things that our best friend is doing and to help give ourselves permission to recognize the amazing things that we've done. And a part of that is by looking back and looking at where have I been since then, especially in the day-to-day, even now that hopefully we're more into an endemic than a pandemic, although I feel like I say hopefully a lot with a lot of the way that things have been going the last 2 years. But in the hopes that this is turning into something that's hopefully not as serious and as prevalent in our lives as it has been, that we notice that even though it feels like we're still doing the same thing day in and day out, there is progress that is being made. There is still a forward motion, and we are able to control that forward motion. And even in the midst of feeling like we're constantly trying to push and push and push to move and move and move, that even if you feel defeated and you feel like I haven't gotten to the place that I thought I would be in 2 years, and it's because of a lot of factors that I had absolutely no control over. And I think a lot of us can feel like that, especially with everything that we've been facing, that there has been forward motion and there has been things that we have been able to do, that you've been able to do. And I just want to say congratulations, and take a moment if you're in the car, take a moment after this podcast to turn on your favorite celebratory song and just remind yourself that I have done something really cool, whatever it was that your goal was, whatever it was that where you were, and celebrate not only those big milestones, but to celebrate the little wins that you've had. Maybe today you managed to do a little workout, and that's something that you've been struggling with for a while. I know I struggle with that all the time. I would rather probably binge watch a TV show than get on a cycle bike, but that's a little win to remind yourself. And when you do have those wins, don't just say, okay, great, I did that thing. What now? On to the next thing. But really take even 5 minutes to say, wow, I actually did that. I accomplished something that I had been working towards and I'd been working on for a while. And I need to recognize this moment and have even a tradition maybe that you do for yourself of every time that little win happens or the big milestone happens, that there is a way that you commemorate that moment. It could be taking yourself out to a favorite restaurant or buying yourself some ice cream. I am very much motivated by food, if you can't tell. So most of my motivation and most of my commemorations are around food. But maybe it's, going to a store or giving yourself a night off and just resting. It could even be taking a long bath if you can actually find the time to do that. But whatever it is, commemorate it, recognize it. And if you struggle with doing that, I hope that if you don't have a accountability friend or someone to celebrate with you, that you maybe think about that being one of your priorities, is to find someone that you can celebrate with. That if you texted that person and said, hey, I just accomplished this, they give you a gold star or they give you a Lisa Frank sticker, which is what one of my accountability celebratory friends does. We just had a friend who accomplished to say no to something the other day. She loves to say yes to any way that she can possibly help someone. And she knows that that is a struggle because her plate is already full and she can't possibly fit something else on it. But she wants to give so badly and she wants to help people so badly that for her to say no is a struggle. And the other day, she managed to say no to something that did not serve her or her mission or her business. And she texted it to us, our group text. And one person was sending her congratulations. I sent her a gold star. And our other friend, what her thing is that she sends a Lisa Frank sticker GIF to us, which if you grew up in the 90s like I did and like she did, like that is as good as gold, is to have that Lisa Frank sticker. Like that is a commemoration of something big, is to have a Lisa Frank sticker to commemorate it. But to have those people that you can go to and say, hey, I did this thing. And they're like, you are an amazing human being. And you can spend a few minutes in that state of just honoring that there was something that you have been struggling with, however big or small that is an amazing accomplishment. So if you are someone that has trouble with saying no, which I have a feeling if you are a part of our community or you have found us, more than likely you're the type of human that has a immense depth of compassion for other people and you want to help and you love to help and you're incredibly empathetic and you are a prime target for getting someone to say yes to things. So if that's you, and you are struggling with knowing when to say no and feeling guilty because you feel like you're letting someone down and you're not thinking about needing to take care of yourself and that no matter what, you are still your number one priority, or at least you should be your number one priority because you and your body and your mind are really all you have. I want you to think about everything that you have on your plate right now. And one of my favorite analogies, and I share this with every single person that I ever have this conversation with, and especially when I have to say no to something or I have to say not yet to something, is looking at all of the different things that I have to get done and that I have to do and the goals that I have set for myself as different plates that I'm constantly spinning. And I have a lot of plates, a lot of plates. I will say that again. I have a lot of plates. And I think about my plates in the context of some are paper and some are glass. Some I have to keep them spinning because if I don't keep them spinning, they're going to crash to the ground. And it's going to create a big mess of things. And it's going to be really difficult to put the pieces back together. But there's a lot of things that are really paper plates if I really think about them. If I let them fall to the ground, they'll float down gently. I can pick them back up. They'll be fine. And I can put them back on that rod again and I can start spinning them again. And because people know me so well, a lot of times I'll tell them, that's a paper plate thing for me right now. So I need to say not right now to that. And I will come back to it. But there's a lot of things like, for example, my relationship and the time that I spend with my husband is pretty much always a glass plate for me. I don't usually do things on the weekends beyond spending time with him. Sometimes I'll say yes to things in the evenings during the week. And he completely understands that. But I really try not to go too late into the evening, beyond like 7:00. Because for me, our relationship and our time together is always a glass plate. But there's other instances where sometimes something will be a glass plate one week and then it gets turned into a paper plate the other week. And I kind of took this analogy and this metaphor from a woman that unfortunately I cannot recall her name, but I remember reading an article about her. What her analogy was with glass balls and rubber balls. But I feel like I'm not so much a juggler as I am someone who's constantly running from plate to plate, just making sure that I'm keeping the momentum going. And I'm jumping from plate to plate to plate all the time, trying to make sure that I'm keeping the momentum going. That more so feels like what I'm doing on a daily, weekly basis. So there's some things like doing some things with the Let Her Speak organization, or doing things with some of the consulting work that I do. Or sometimes it's even admittedly keeping up with some of my friends that some weeks they are glass plates because I know that a friend is going through something really difficult right now, or there's something really important that I want to make sure that I accomplish and do for the Let Her Speak community, that those are sometimes glass plates. But then sometimes I have to be honest with myself and I have to make them a paper plate because there are a lot more pressing, a lot more prevalent things on there. But I feel like beyond my relationship with my husband, so my family almost always being a glass plate, I have a feeling that if you're listening to this and you've been nodding to yourself for a while about a lot of the points that I've been making, that something that more often than not is a paper plate is things that you're doing for yourself and ways that you're taking care of yourself, ways that you're doing something for you for pure enjoyment and for pure happiness, that it just makes you lighten from the inside out. That a lot of times we treat that as a paper plate rather than a glass plate. I am definitely guilty of that. And so my ask of you, and in these interim episodes between doing interviews with the women that we're bringing back from the She Speaks Spotlight to be in the She Speaks podcast, is we're going to have little homework assignments for you. So this is your first homework assignment. Turn that paper plate that's labeled taking care of myself, caring about my own needs, caring about what I want to do, and caring about the life that you want to have. Turn that paper plate into a glass plate. Put a priority on it. And the biggest piece of that homework assignment is it's not just as simple as flipping a switch. I'm sure you know and recognize that you can't just flip a switch and say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to start taking care of myself now. And bang, you do it. If that were the case, I'm pretty sure that every single gym and diet program that runs ads at the beginning of the year would not be in business if it was as easy as flipping a switch. But I want you to just think about what is the smallest thing that you can do for yourself to show yourself that you are as important to be promoted to a glass plate rather than a paper plate. You know, what is the smallest, easiest, lowest hanging fruit thing that you can do? And I want you to actually really do that and not just think about it, but write it down in your planner or put it in your calendar. Send an email to yourself. Tell a friend and have that accountability come back to you of that friend checking in saying, did you do this thing? Or having them help you to plan the thing. Maybe it's going out with them and doing something. Maybe it's finally signing up for a class that you've been wanting to take for a long time. It doesn't always have to be self-improvement. And I know that a lot of times self-care is misconstrued as just doing things that are considered pampering or a luxury treatment, which is definitely self-care, but that's just one element of self-care. Self-care could be giving yourself the freedom to be honest with yourself or be honest with someone else about what your needs are. And what you need right now. Maybe it's telling someone, you know what, I've been doing X, Y, or Z for this home for a long time, and I just really need a break, and I need you to do this thing for me. Or I could really use a night off, or I would really appreciate being able to take the weekend and just be by myself and, rent a hotel or something. But whatever it is, determine what is that simplest thing that you can do and actually do it. And let's say the next 7 days, do that smallest thing, whatever it is. And if you're struggling with trying to figure out what is something that I can do for myself, maybe that is the homework assignment, is in the next 7 days, really take stock and be present in how are you spending your days? When is it that you are feeling the most tired, the most almost burned out, the most stressed? And what is it that could help change that and could help alleviate that? And just by virtue of being mindful of where you're at on any given day and how you're feeling and taking stock in that, that is a huge accomplishment. So make sure you commemorate that. Get yourself a Lisa Frank sticker, or some cool school supplies. I love a good school supply. And that can be the accomplishment that you had, which is a big thing, is just recognizing what is it that I need and being able to convey to someone else, if necessary, this is what I need right now. Can you do this for me, please? I really could use your help. That is your homework assignment. And thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back next week with our very first then episode of the She Speaks podcast, where we will be looking back at an episode that was recorded a couple years ago. And then the following week, we will then be sharing the now interview with that woman, where we get to go on that journey with her of seeing how far has she come and where is she now and how did she get there. So thank you so much. If you are not following us currently on Instagram, make sure you follow us at Let Her Speak US. And as part of that homework assignment, we would love for you to send us a message and let us know what is the thing that you figured out that you need to do for yourself. What is that little thing? Share with us, whether it's just a message, or if you have a photo that, hey, I'm doing this thing because I decided that this was the thing that I needed most right now. Send that to us and we will 100% share. That is the biggest thing with the Let Her Speak platform, is that there is no requirement of a level of success that you need to be at, or a title, or a number of followers, or anything like that. We celebrate and welcome every single woman, no matter where you're at, no matter who you are, that we want to be that person and that platform that can help commemorate and can help celebrate with you. So send us a message. Let us know what it was that you did that and that you asked for, or that you figured out about yourself, about what you need. And we will share that on our platform. And we hope that by more of us talking about this and more of us sharing and commemorating together, that it sends a reverberation for more women to give themselves the permission to do the same. So thank you for being with me today, and we will see you next week. This episode of She Speaks is brought to you by our amazing partners at First Horizon Bank. She Speaks is produced, edited, and scored by the very talented Travis Tench at Oak Hill Audio. If you loved the episode you just heard and want to support Let Her Speak's mission of elevating real women's stories, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share at Let Her Speak USA. Together, we will make our voices heard.